want to get into this new red state evil plot. Seriously, they're going authoritarian. They're ditching democracy. Republicans in state after state, they're loading cannons right now, with the bullseye being democracy itself. And I'll get into that in just a moment. The family of Andrew Brown Jr. is holding a press conference right now, or it might have just wrapped up. This is in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Andrew Brown Jr. is a 42-year-old man who the police were trying to serve a warrant on him for drugs, and they searched his home. They found no drugs. They found no weapons. He apparently was trying to drive away, and they shot him in the back. The video was supposed to, this was 5 days ago, the video was supposed to be released this morning. Ben Crump, his lawyer, was just on TV saying, they just told us that they've got to redact part of the video. What is there, like top secret stuff in there we don't want the Chinese to know about or something? So something skeezy's going on, but I'll keep you up to date on that, and we'll find out what's going on with that. And video shows, this is bizarre. In Colorado, a 73-year-old woman had her shoulder dislocated and fractured by Loveland police. And what did the three arresting officers do after they basically broke her shoulder? Instead of like getting down on the ground and providing medical assistance, they high-fived each other. Yeah, that's what cops do. This should not be what cops do. And in many parts of America, it's not what cops do. And it's certainly not what cops do typically when they're dealing with people that they can see are white and that they believe are affluent. Which kind of gets into my whole red state rant, which I'll just dig into right now, and we can talk about this. This is from the Hartmann Report, HartmannReport.com this morning. The headline is "New Red State Evil Plot: Going Authoritarian and Ditching Democracy." And are these guys going to be ready by next year in 2024? I think they are. We thought that January 6th was the peak of the authoritarian effort to end democracy in America and replace it with, strongman authoritarian rule. Turns out it was just the tip of the iceberg, and there's a whole bunch of that iceberg that's underwater that most Americans are not seeing. And it's not just about Donald Trump. It's about ending democracy altogether in this country and replacing it with a wealthy, white, aristocratic oligarchy. And by the way, as I lay out in my book, The Hidden History of Oligarchy, we're already more than halfway there. But red state after red state right now, they are just nakedly and openly flipping from democracy into a form of authoritarian oligarchy. And they're doing this at the state level. They are passing laws criminalizing protests with such severe penalties that if you show up at a protest and you put your foot off the sidewalk and into the street, boom, 15 years in prison. They are legalizing the murder of pro-democracy, anti-fascist protesters. So like the guy who drove his car into that crowd when you had the Trump Nazi protest, or whatever you want to call it, the Jews will not replace us thing going on in Charlottesville, North Carolina. Trump's very fine people. The guy who drove his car and killed Heather Heyer. Well, under this new law that has been introduced into 3 states, passed in 1, and is looking to be introduced into at least a half a dozen or a dozen other states over the next week or so. Under this new law, it's sort of like stand your ground, like how Trayvon Martin's killer got away with it. Which is to say that if you're in a riot, and of course the police would have to declare it a riot, which they're pretty enthusiastic about doing. Oh, there's a bunch of black people together. They're in the streets. Let's call it a riot. If you're in a riot and you have a car and you want to get out of that riot and you just have to run over a few people on the way to do it, whether you injure them, break a few legs, kill them, whatever. Hey, you're just standing your ground. You're just getting out of there. It's totally safe. No problem. And then finally, and probably the most alarming, and this is the thing that gets the least publicity, all of these laws, like the law that was passed in Georgia, the law that was passed in Iowa, other laws that are pending in a dozen or more other red states. Most of this is happening in red states, but a lot of this is happening in what you might call purple states. States where the legislature is still controlled by Republicans, but the statewide offices are going increasingly to Democrats. And this is, the legislature is controlled by Republicans because of gerrymandering. I'm talking about states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona. What we're seeing is that in these states, state after state, the Republicans are actually taking over the mechanism of voting. They're pushing, as they did in Georgia. Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State in Georgia, he's the guy who is supposed to sign off on the vote, on the final vote. They just took him out of the loop altogether. Said, sorry, Brad, you got nothing to say about this. It's going to be up to Republican officials now. We're going to decide which votes are going to be counted and which aren't. We got some votes here from Fulton County, a lot of black people there in Atlanta. We're not sure we want to count those votes. We'll just set those aside. Right, that's how it's going to work. This is the new Republican plan. And so, and now we've got, you can see this right now in Arizona, where the Arizona state legislature, controlled by Republicans, hired this conspiracy nut group that has never before audited an election to come in and audit the election in Arizona, where they're looking at each single ballot, and they've got like blue pens where they can change the ballots. It's just bizarre. It looks like they're rigging the recount so that they can say, oh yeah, Trump won Arizona. Hey, I wonder if he won Georgia too. I wonder if he won Michigan too. This is nuts. And why is this? Because these Republicans don't believe in democracy. They think it's a quaint idea, but it's outdated, and what we really need to do is just let the really smart people run the country. And who are the really smart people? Well, this is kind of the secular version of Calvinism. Hundreds of years ago, John Calvin's followers were like, okay, if we're going to elect our own officials, if we're not going to go with kings who are appointed by God, how do we figure out who God really wants to run the show? Oh, look at the rich people. Well, same thing. Who are the really smart people who should run the country? The really rich people. And our media is constantly amplifying this. Hey, let's get Bill Gates on and listen to what he has to say. He's a really smart guy. Let's go to Davos and listen to the billionaires.